This morning, the state budget is headed to the governor's desk, and local school districts are the big winners.
Yeah, many of them had warned about layoffs and cuts to programming because of budget shortfalls. Over the weekend, lawmakers agreed to provide more funding. New Britain is one of those districts. Your reporter Anna Stansfield live there this morning to explain what this means. Anna.
Well, good morning. The state is going to be giving out about $193 million to towns and cities across Connecticut in that educational funding. Here in New Britain, they'll see about a $13.3 million income from this state, which is really going to help them close their nearly $19 million budget gap. After months of debate, the state Senate and House have passed a budget that will now make its way to the governor's desk. It comes after mayors and superintendents have pleaded for more funding at the state capitol, saying they can't keep up with the rising costs of education. Here in New Britain, the district could receive millions more than they were expecting, which means less will need to be cut, but there's still about a $5.5 million gap to close. City leaders say they're happy to see additional funding coming from the state, but no, it won't solve the long-standing issues in the district. The mayor now asking for a full review of how the district approaches budgeting, planning, and fiscal management. The Board of Education will meet here once again tonight. We're sure they're going to talk about this additional funding that has just recently come in from the state and discuss how that will impact the potential for future cuts here in the district. I'm your reporter live in New Britain, Anna Stansfield, Channel 3 Eyewitness News.